everyone. Welcome to City Hall, welcome to Council Chambers, and welcome to a meeting of the Los Angeles City Council for today, Wednesday, September 3rd, 2003. City Council meets every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. Meetings are open to the public, and we do invite you to join us. For members of the public unable to attend council meetings, we can be viewed live on your cable station, Channel 35. We can also be viewed live via webcast from the city's homepage or heard via council phone. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Cardenas, Garcetti, Gruel, Han, Labange, Ludlow, Miskowski, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Smith, Villaraigosa, Weiss, Zine, Padilla, 10 members present, and a quorum is present.
Thank you very much. The council is officially in session, and before beginning with the items appearing on today's agenda, let me recognize Councilmember Han for a special introduction.
Very much, Mr. President, colleagues. I would like to introduce some very special guests that have traveled all the way downtown to City Hall to be with us. We have members of the Harbor City Harbor Gateway Chamber of Commerce, and we also have members of the Lomita Chamber of Commerce. And I'd like to introduce, have stand up Joanne Valley, who's the Executive Director of the Harbor City Harbor Gateway Chamber, and Mark Warnick, who is the Chair of the Governmental Affairs Committee, who have come down here. And they're a group of very active people in their community and the business community. They've come down here for a City Hall day. I greeted them earlier for breakfast. They will now spend time with various city departments, talking to them about how to get things done in the city of Los Angeles. And they will conclude with a lunch up in our beautiful Tom Bradley Towers, where our city attorney Rocky Delgadillo will be speaking with them. So I really want to thank them for coming down and thanking them for being involved in city government and trying to make their communities and certainly their business communities a more viable place in the city of Los Angeles. So thanks for being here.
Thank you, Ms. Han. Madam Clerk, first order of business, please.
Approval of the minutes.
Ms. Perry moves and Ms. Han seconds.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Mr. Ludlow moves and Mr. Smith seconds.
Before beginning the regular agenda, there is a request to continue item number 31 for 2 weeks, and that would be to September 17th, and that's a request by the Housing Department.
That's item 31.
Yes, Mr. President.
Colleagues request to continue item 31. Seeing no objection, item 31 is continued. Next item, please.
On the regular agenda, items noticed for public hearing. Item number 1 is a public convenience or necessity in Council District 10. A motion is required to grant or deny the application.
Okay, I do not have requests from members of the public to address the council on item number 1. The public hearing is therefore opened and closed. We do need a motion on item number 1, a matter in the 10th District. Let's call that special.
Okay. The next item, item number 2, is also an item notice for public hearing. It's a Planning Land Use Management Committee report and 2 ordinances.
Okay, and number 2, do not have requests from members of the public to address the council on this item. Public hearing is open and closed. Members wishing to call this item special. Mr. Garcetti?
Can we call a special for Mr. Reyes, please?
Number 2, call special for Mr. Reyes, who will arrive shortly. Next item, please.
Items for which public hearings have been held, items 3 through 25.
Items 3 to 25 now before us. Public hearings have been held on these items. Any specials by council members? Mr. Weiss.
3 and 20.
Item 3 and item 20, call special by Mr. Weiss.
And I believe there's a request to continue item number 21 to September 12th.
Any objection to continuing item number 21? Seeing none, item 21 is continued. Ms. Han?
Thank you. I'd like to call item 14 special.
Which item?
14.
14, call special by Ms. Han. Any other specials? I have item 3, 14, and 20 called special. Item 21 has been continued. Any other specials on items 4 through 25? Seeing none on the balance of the items, Madam Clerk, please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Those are approved. Next items, please.
Items for which public hearings have not been held, items 26 through 47, 10 votes are required for consideration.
Before proceeding to the next items, colleagues, there's been a request for reconsideration of item number 10. Is there any objection? Without objection, Item 10, let's reconsider that item and hold that on the desk, and we will hear shortly from our city attorney on item number 10. Bringing us back to items 26 through 47, I do not have requests from members of the public to address the council on these items. Public hearings are therefore open and closed. Members wishing to call any specials, items 26 through 47. Item 31 has previously been continued. Seeing no requests for specials, Madam Clerk, please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Those are approved. Next items, please.
Items 48 and 49 are closed session items. Do you wish to hold those matters on the desk?
Let's hold all closed session items on the desk.
Then going back to the items called special, item number 1 was called special, and a motion is required to grant or deny the application. It's public convenience and necessity in Council District 10.
Okay, actually, we just received a request to take item number 14 out of order. Without objection, let's proceed, colleagues, to item 14, and let me recognize Councilmember Hahn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate you taking this out of order. I just wanted to get it off the agenda so I could go and take a quick photo with my chamber members, and then they could be on their day. Mr. President, colleagues, I rise to ask your support of this issue. I brought this motion before this body because I have a problem, and I know we have problems in other parts of the city about catering trucks. And with the business community here, it really did come from the legitimate businesses in my communities, particularly in Wilmington, where there was a problem of catering trucks coming into business communities, into residential neighborhoods, and really setting up shop without proper licensing and really taking away legitimate business from the businesses who have gone through the process and gotten their business license tax and gotten their health certificates and whatever they need. And we felt there needed to be a better ordinance in the city of Los Angeles regulating where catering trucks could locate, the length of time they could be in a particular area, and whether or not they could ever be in residential areas of our community. So what we're asking for today is that you support me in asking the city attorney, along with the Department of Transportation, to draft an ordinance which will take a serious look at catering trucks citywide and set up guidelines that make sense. Make sense for the catering truck operators, but more importantly, make sense for the businesses in our community. So I ask for your support on this measure.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. Mr. Labange.
Thank you, Mr. President, and Ms. Hahn and members. This is an extremely important issue. Yesterday, where Councilmember Gruhl and I joined the mayor and the governor, superintendent of the school district, is Governor Romer, at a groundbreaking of East Valley High School. One of the topics in the pre-conversation in the press conference was about catering trucks and ice cream trucks near schools and the safety issue that involves. And Mr. Reyes is head of planning. I think it's important that we look at this again because there's a mobile community out there that does like catering trucks. But let's place them at the right spot. And it may be, and I've always felt this, like I hate to see them sell fruit above a storm drain on a corner. I saw that in Mr. Garcetti's district at Bellevue and Rampart the other day. And I said, what we should do is work with the planning department for whether it's catering trucks or fruit vendors or ice cream vendors, and you have at these corner shopping centers, maybe get a 20 by 20 foot square area that they would allow them to park for some temporary time and do that and get them off the public right away, get them off the storm drains, get them out of the school zones. And as it related to the school zones, Ms. Hahn, I know you're extremely interested in safety for children, as I said, what we should do is tell those vendors if they want to sell ice cream is have them become friends of that local school and give a contribution to the school and have them park on the campus so the kids aren't running across the street or down the street to the catering truck or the ice cream truck. I think it's an absolutely important issue. I know I worked on it long ago when I worked for John Ferraro many, many years in the 80s, and the challenges of when catering trucks would line up all in one parking meter space along Wilshire Boulevard. And I know sometimes traffic officers would go and have to spend their time engaging with these folks. So I think we should apply it by law. So I just wanted to stand to support you on this issue. I think it's extremely important, but also I think we should have to look at the change in the community that some people do like catering trucks, some people do like the mobile meals. And I will mention Royce Newshots, who was a great late Commissioner of Recreation and Parks. She always felt we never should build another concession stand in the parks, but yet build a River Rock style space where a catering truck could pull behind and be the temporary facility, because you have someone come in at a high peak season and sell their goods, not necessarily all the time. So I think it's extremely timely that you have this, and I stand to support it. And I wanted to call out Mr. Reyes because of planning, because of land use as it relates to that, and I thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. I have next Mr. Cardenas, followed by Mr. Zine and Mr. Reyes.
Thank you very much. I was very pleased to see that we heard this in committee the other day, and I want to thank Ms. Hahn for bringing this to our attention. This has long been a problem in our city, and fortunately and unfortunately, other cities have dealt with this. Hopefully, we can actually explore what other cities have done legally to apprehend this situation and bring it under control. It's very ironic that, unfortunately, some of the vendors who are actually taking advantage of our streets are not paying taxes, they're not part of the system, yet they're reaping the benefit of being able to park their units right there on the public right-of-way, of which taxes are paying for that nice little spot for them to do business out of. In addition to that, having been a business taxpayer in this city myself, I do appreciate the fact that we do need to encourage people to get registered, to make sure that they do follow rules and that they do become part of the system so they can benefit from it, yet at the same time they can actually return some of those benefits to the surrounding community for that use and for the public benefit at large. So this is definitely a problem that we've seen here. Certainly in certain areas, I represent part of Pacoima, where unfortunately there are way too many vendors on the streets, way too many people who are endangering people's lives by not having any health permits, not having even the basic understanding. I'm sure people don't want to harm anyone, but at least when you go through the formal process and you actually get yourself registered and you find out that there are health risks in simple things like maybe selling something that has mayonnaise on it, selling something that has perishable goods that people are going to be putting into their mouths or even feeding to their children. These are the kinds of things that I don't think is healthy for individuals. It's not healthy for Los Angeles, and I'm glad to see that we're finally looking into this. And I think the next step is going to be for the city attorney's office to look at what legal parameters we have to addressing this issue. So once again, thank you, Ms. Hahn, for bringing this to our proper attention, and hopefully we're going to make some real substantive changes in Los Angeles and get this thing under control. Thank you.
Mr. Zine.
Thank you, Mr. President, colleagues, Councilmember Hahn and Councilmember Reyes. Commend you for bringing this to the attention of the council. Many years in the San Fernando Valley, we've had this problem. In the Northeast Valley, in the Southeast Valley, and obviously in the 15th District and in the 1st District and all around the city. It's long overdue we take some action on it. And I know that from my activities with LAPD, we used to have task force that would go out there with the ice cream vendors because of the problems they were causing around schools. But as been mentioned, the health hazards, the health department, oftentimes if we were able to bring a health inspector out, cite these folks and take those carts and those catering vehicles that aren't licensed, that aren't regulated, and it's a hazard for the community. So I totally support it. It's long overdue. The police department has been working with the existing laws, which are not adequate, but there are health violations, as already been stated. There are traffic violations that we know happen. Children run out in front of these. There's no regulation. I grew up and you grew up under the Helms Bakery when the little Helms truck went by and the Good Humor ice cream truck, and they were licensed, they were regulated, they were inspected, and as we look at years past, that's all gone away, and now it's a private enterprise with no regulation, and it caused disruption around the schools and the community. So I'm in strong support of this. Again, it's long overdue that we make this change to bring safety to our communities. Also the push carts, and I don't know if we can address that, but the push carts aren't regulated. And with the push carts, there's also health contamination where they push those down the street with the little bells in the communities, and we've received complaints on that also. So a lot of this happens throughout the city. I noticed that the motion was the 15th District, but from the far West Valley all around the city, this is a continuing saga, continuing problem, and hopefully we can pass some legislation to bring it under control and bring some peace and tranquility to those communities. Thank you.
Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Councilmember Hahn. If there ever was an issue that would require the kind of participation from local bodies in a respective district, this is one of those issues. When you have a catering truck in front of a restaurant, it's unfair for the owner to have to endure that kind of competition. When you have a catering truck that's competing with other catering trucks, and I can tell you, actually, on some parts of my district, I will have 3 catering trucks on one side and 2 or 3 on the other, and they're all packed. And I keep thinking, where's our revenue base here? Where's our tax revenue base? I do know that working with County Supervisor Gloria Molina, there's been a strong concern about the health code issues. County health issues are very real when it comes to coordinating with the city. But if there ever was an issue that could bring in the neighborhood councils, could bring in the business investment districts, could bring in all those entities, the chamber, to talk about how we can start designing our commercial thoroughfares so we can understand the notion of what's complementary. Because on the other side of the coin, you have families and you have individuals who are trying to feed and maintain a livelihood any which way they can. And being a city that has a large immigrant community, you have cultural and social norms that are acceptable in other parts of the world, but may not be able to fit in how we conduct business in Los Angeles. So it is a very complicated issue, and has to be dealt with in such a manner where we're not penalizing people for trying to make an honest living. They're not stealing, they're not dealing drugs, they're not doing the kinds of things that can be punitive and penalizing our communities. But we also know that there are complications in how we need to support those individuals who pay their taxes, who pay for licenses, and deserve that service of protection. So this is a tough one. This is one in which we're going to have a lot of push and pull, but it is something we need to bring a focus on for the health of our kids, our families, but also for the economic health of this city. So let's begin. Thank you.
Councilmember Parks for a first time.
I also want to rise and really discuss how the importance of this issue is, because it does require balance. And the same way that we've struck a balance with the day laborers, on the one hand, certain companies come into our communities and provide a great service of supplies, but yet there are people who are looking for people to do the jobs. But I think in looking in the 8th District particularly, there's a great deal of concern about the issue of these vendors on our streets, the health issues, whether they are providing healthy food, whether they are providing food in which can pass the test of a restaurant. But also, I think when we look at this issue, there's an absolute necessity that we look at the overall financial impact for business licenses, because there are single families, there are families that are in business. And I think the other issue that is of concern to me is that in addition to looking at these families, what they contribute, is that we have to look at the larger issue of the business. Just became aware just this morning that one of our major businesses in our city actually constructs vendor trucks in which these trucks are used. What impact does that make if we cut down the business and then run another business out of the city? So I think it's important that we look at the overall balance, economic impact, but certainly not move away from the requirements of business license, health licenses, and looking for the balance that I think has been struck for day laborers, in which many people have applauded the city for being on the front and the cutting edge, front end and the cutting edge of dealing with something that was viewed as totally a nuisance in communities, but has been brought in full circle to bring it in a productive manner that where everybody benefits. And so I would hope we look at it in the balance, in the sense of what we're dealing with. Many of these businesses are single families. They are people that are the only form of income. Plus, I think we have to realize where those businesses thrive are communities that do not have sit-down restaurants, do not have the kinds of things where people can just walk down the street to a shopping mall and be able to gain the services that they provide. And so with those balances, I'd hope we'd go through this and not just view on the enforcement side and run businesses out of the city that are viable and that are keeping the tax base of the city viable in the city of Los Angeles. Thank you.
Ms. Miskowski.
Thank you. I just wanted to share some of the concerns talking about the balance issue. I was around, I think maybe Mr. Hernandez, when he was chair of Planning and Land Use Management Committee, helped create the task force that updated the catering ordinance as we know it today. I mean, prior to what the ordinance is today, there were essentially no limits. Those catering trucks could come and park at a location outside a business or in a community all day long. And there were no regulations relative to enforcing cleanup and things like that. So that's where we came up with the restrictions, limiting it for a certain amount of time in both commercial and residential areas. On the side of the balance side, there are tools available right now, and I would encourage, I've recently had a meeting in my West LA community with the West LA Neighborhood Council and the senior lead officer and the neighborhood prosecutor about a group of catering trucks that, now they don't have the nice little jingling bell like the old Good Humor trucks, remember, but they have these air horns that play their songs, and they're loud, and they're much more noticeable and irritating. And so we've had a lot of those trucks now not play those loud, blaring air horn type music, but something else, and come to designated areas at designated times. The other convenience that they offer, even in residential areas, I don't know if all areas of the city are affected, but in some areas of our residential community, we have an awful lot of home improvement, construction going on, where those residences are very far away from nearby convenience stores and the things like that. And if they go into a community where there can be a designated spot, which isn't in front of somebody's house, but maybe on a nice long parkway against a water and power building or something, not near schools, then they can serve. If they're only there for that 30-minute period, everybody who goes up in those neighborhoods who's doing the jobs in the morning knows that catering truck might be there at a certain point. But we've worked very effectively with the senior leads, with the neighborhood prosecutor, with our neighborhood councils, to find those designated places where they aren't a problem, aren't a nuisance, and are controlled. But there's no harm in looking again overall comprehensively for bringing in some of the other ideas that are out there. But again, I think it is one of balance. When we did it last time, and I know Mr. Hernandez remembers this, we had the chambers filled with catering truck operators saying, don't put us out of business, this is a socioeconomic livelihood for us. And so again, like everything else we do here, there is a balance that we have to accommodate.
Ms. Hahn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I really appreciate the discussion we're having on this item, and I think you should all be assured that clearly we expect the city attorney and the Department of Transportation to come back to us with an ordinance that is balanced, that does make sense. And I actually think this is a great time for neighborhood councils and chambers of commerce all over the city to begin weighing in on this issue, with direct communication with your council members, direct communication with your neighborhood councils, because you probably already have some great ideas and ways to make this make sense and to make this work for everybody. But it's clear the time has come to find something that does make sense, that does not put people out of business, but as Councilwoman Miskowski said, there's many industrial locations or construction projects going on. Actually, we're seeing kind of a boom in construction projects right now, and certainly catering trucks are more than welcome and really necessary to service the people that are working on the construction. So we're not going to put anybody out of business, but we have to really find a balance with what we do here in the city of Los Angeles. And let it be said that this city council caters to the needs of our community.
Mr. Labange.
I just want to say the nice thing about this job is you could relive your life. I remember in 1960, they were building the church that I attended, and I made friends with the guy in the catering truck. And he gave me, and I told my buddies in third grade that this was the big cheese. And the guy liked it enough where he gave me a free, I don't know if I had to report it now, statute of limitations is up. But anyway, Mr. Deaton, I want to ask you a question because you've been around so much here and you're so familiar with these issues here on this. As you can see, so many members of council have spoken about catering trucks and the issues and that. And I do want to again praise Mr. Reyes for looking at the planning issues and whatever. But what do you see as some of these things that are, the balance between business and neighborhoods and these trucks? And obviously, it's a very big industry, but we want to try to protect neighborhoods and the commerce that exists there. Could you maybe have one of your staff people watch this as well to push it along? Because you could see throughout the city, it's a significant situation.
We'd be happy to look further into it, but it's the whole issue of government is that your ability to swing your fist stops when you hit my nose. And I think that they have a perfect right to certain business activities, but when they start adversely affecting the neighborhoods, then I think they have to conform to some requirements that allows the neighborhoods to continue in the way they are. So it's a difficult balance, but their right to swing their arm stops when the neighborhood's nose get in the way.
Well, on that account,
that's
there's 88...
not esoteric, but it certainly is.
It is pretty good. I like that, but I don't know what a buddy knows. But there's all these different cities in the county, and some cities do it a little different. They may not have these problems in some of the smaller cities. So if you could have one of your persons look at that too,
Sure.
in intergovernmental relations, what they do in Santa Monica, what they do in San Fernando, what they do in Torrance, Long Beach, etc. I thank you.
You're quite welcome, Mr. Labange. It's nice to be back.
And you're the big cheese now.
No comment.
Ms. Gruhl.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to similarly talk about this issue and its problems, and I'd like to, if we can, Mr. Deaton, if we're expanding, Mr. Deaton, that's right. And I know it was talked a little bit earlier, I was listening on the box, the things that we have with ice cream trucks and some of the issues. I know in the county of Los Angeles, for example, it's 1,000 feet from a school. Ours, I think, is closer to 500 feet, as I recall. And that the idea also of increasing the fines relative to some of those ice cream trucks, and it may, again, since we're looking at catering trucks, it might make sense for us to look as well at the ice cream trucks. We're finding in my district is that they are breaking the law. They're coming in closer to the schools, obviously, and it's a dangerous situation. And they figure the fine is so minimal that, it's a cost of doing business. And so it may be that we introduce a separate motion to consider that, or at least, again, as we're...
We'll take a look at the different... That is, the one thing I hadn't talked about is the danger issue of both catering trucks and, obviously, with ice cream. Having 8 granddaughters, when the... Very visual to me, when the ice cream truck comes down the street, you have to be careful to make sure they don't make a mad rush. And so there's other issues other than just the business.
Okay. So I
involved.
think, again,
Sure.
as this goes forward, we'd like to look at that, and if it's necessary to introduce a separate motion or amendment to do that, again, we might look at increasing the fines relative to the ice cream trucks.
And see if we
but
can find any other things that might be comparable as well.
That'd be
Yeah.
great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Reyes.
As I'm hearing the dialogue, the one thing that resounds in my mind is the voice of the LAPD and traffic officials about enforcement. And so I just want to reemphasize that our work with the chambers, our work with the BIDs and enforcement, and having these understandings and agreements with these individuals is going to be key. Our communication, our ability to let them know what's acceptable and what isn't. When we're challenged with the number of officers that we have and the levels of crime that we have throughout the city, enforcing catering trucks, as it starts going to levels of priority, it becomes pretty obvious what's going to be addressed and what isn't. So in this policy discussion, as we wait for the report back from the department and the city attorney, I think we as policymakers should fold into this policy, this understanding that it really is about how communities are able to get informed, educated, and literally police themselves in dealing with these issues. I don't believe we're going to have the kind of time from the LAPD and those other enforcement arms of the city to respond in a manner that I think they need to respond from the sheer impact of everything else that's happening in the city. So if we're going to be effective, we need to fold in, I just want to echo your comments, Councilmember Hahn, in that how we bring in the bid, the chamber, and these other local groups, neighborhood councils, is going to be critical in making this really have the kind of substance that I think it deserves.
Mr. Labange.
Just a friendly amendment, because as Wendy and I both were at that press conference yesterday, asked the city attorney to put ice cream trucks in there as true as catering trucks and ice cream trucks, so we don't. Dennis, you're an old sergeant. That sounds good, right? Okay, good, yeah. Old sergeant with an old beard. And, but ice cream trucks, add that to that, and also consult other cities in the county to see what they do to be effective. Is that a friendly? Accepted. County. All right, thank you.
Okay, that friendly amendment is accepted. Any further discussion? Other members wishing to be heard? Seeing none, then let's open the roll on item 14 as amended. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
That is approved. Next item, please.
Item number 1 is a public hearing item, and that is a public convenience or necessity in Council District 10, and the motion is required.
Item number 1 now back before us. Do we have a motion ready from?
I believe
Council
Mr.
District
Ludlow has a motion on that.
Can I hold this on the desk for?
Sure, let's hold it
Thanks.
up for a few more minutes. Next item, please.
Item number 2 was called special for Councilmember Reyes.
Mr. Reyes, item number 2.
Yes, Council President, I'd like to continue this item for 2 weeks.
Okay, colleagues, request for a 2-week continuance. That would be September 17th, the new hearing date. Without objection, item 2 is continued. Next item, please.
Item number 3 was called special by Councilmember Weiss.
Before we get to item number 3, let me recognize Councilmember Garcetti for an introduction.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I just wanted to welcome to our council chambers as one of the people who's participating in America's Second Harvest National Conference here in Los Angeles, where over 50,000 charities from around the country and local food banks are meeting in Hollywood this week. Mr. Bob Randles from Battle Creek, Michigan, Ginger Hens, who's with him as well. Wanted to welcome you both officially to the city of Los Angeles. It's great to have you here and many of the folks that are working on our food banks and combating the issue of hunger, and no doubt we can figure out some way we can have the catering trucks contribute to that as well. But thank you both for being here.
Welcome to Los Angeles. Back to item number 3, Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to hear an element of the report from Mr. Fujioka and/or Mr. Deaton. If they could just tell us what they told the Budget Committee.
Is it okay if Dr. No joins us?
Absolutely.
Good morning. At this point in time, we're in the process of developing a report that should be released shortly in the next couple of days. In fact, I have a draft report that addresses the actions our office will be recommending to deal with the shortfall caused by the state budget. At this point in time, we've identified a shortfall of approximately $47 million. The principal driver is the impact of losing some VLF funding, your vehicle license fee. This council needs to know that because of the dynamics in Sacramento, there are a lot of different proposals that are being that are floating around right now that could have an even greater impact on this city. But right now, the hard facts are that we have a $47 million hit caused by the state budget. We have a number of budget reductions that we'll be bringing back to your council, first through Budget and Finance, and then probably Personnel within the next couple of weeks. We also will be bringing forward to your council a report on that will have the final figures for the year end and then the reserve fund. We'll also, on a monthly basis, be updating you on the status of our own city budget by department we've sent out a revised format for our monthly financial status reports that will provide much more detail than we have in the past regarding a department's finances and expenditures. But we are working with your CLA. I have shared some of the information regarding what we're recommending in terms of budget reductions, and we're in the process of finalizing that effort.
That, addresses the state, the actions of the state. As Mr. Fujioka indicated, we're going to set in place a process that we can monitor the budget. As reported to this council during the budgetary process, we believe that we are facing notwithstanding the state's actions, a difficult problem in next year, and we'll be showing you where we think we are, and as we get closer to where we, given all the other factors some of the factors which were during the budgetary process unknown are now known, we'll probably within the next 30 days be giving you a number of what it takes to get ourselves in good shape for next fiscal year.
I actually have some follow-up questions, but Mr. Parks, I was just going to say that since you're chair of the committee, if you wanted to speak and present what your committee's doing, I'd be delighted to defer to you and let you lead this conversation, then I'll ask my follow-ups afterwards.
Thank you very much. I was just appreciative that we had a very extensive report from both the CLA and CAO at one of our recent budget committees. I think a couple of things have occurred since then, and there was this debate in Sacramento about reducing the vehicle license from 3 times and then replacing it with some of the sin tax, and understood that could cause us some additional concerns, not only with the shortage of money, but also that we may have a cash flow problem in how they disperse the tax, and I was wondering if you could comment on that.
Well, I fully expect first off, the budget is not totally up to date, having just got back, but I don't think the state budget is still finalized. Senate, I don't think, has concurred in every aspect of it, so even what they have done is a little open to some adjustments. But assuming that was closed in the way that the Assembly passed it, the state's still looking at a $10 billion plus problem next year, and as long as they're looking at that kind of a problem, $47 million is the floor. We could still be we're still, to say the very least, it's in play. Yeah. And we'll be in play all this fiscal year. So you're going to see proposal after proposal, none of which will probably be what we had in mind.
One thing
what the councilman was referring to was swapping out some of our sales tax for property tax. And the sales tax we receive on a monthly basis versus property tax, we get the big checks in December and March. So that would create a cash flow problem for us, which would increase our borrowing costs because we'd have to borrow more money on an upfront basis to deal with our cash needs. One point I forgot to emphasize is the importance of sticking with our budget plan this year. And I know that there are a number of needs right now throughout the city, and there'll be needs that you're going to want to address in your respective districts. But right now, because of what we're facing this year and the uncertainties of next year, given this $10 billion deficit that the state's carrying over from this into next year, we know there will be a greater consequence to the city next year when the state tries to balance its budget. And then this whole recall madness could add to our own financial problems. Yeah. So,
have we figured out, they estimate about 60 to 70 million for recall, whether that is mainly a hit at the county, or is that going to be additional to our 47 million at the city level?
Right now, it's a hit to the counties. The counties will be running the elections, so our counterparts over the county will have a difficult time dealing with that cost.
Okay, but that would translate into less services for their programs that would impact city residents. So,
It could.
okay. The other thing I think
It
was
will.
important during the hearing, if I understood it correctly, in addition to the $47 million hit we expect, that we still have some issues for our city budget for this year, so that we will basically come under budget, or we'll have to make some additional cuts beyond the $47 million. And I thought that would be important to advise the council on some of those issues that are very relevant just going through this fiscal year.
Very definitely. We're going to need to scale back or in some fashion increase revenues in order to be in a position to have a balanced budget next fiscal year.
And then have we heard anything at all? I don't think we had any information at the time of the committee meeting about the federal budget. And do we have any expectation of when that might be forthcoming, or any idea on the amount of money it may be of impact on us?
At this point in time, we're not tracking a significant hit or financial consequence caused by the federal budget. Our main problems are coming from the state.
And then one thing, Mr. Fujioka, you mentioned that we're going to start with that first listing of about $47 million, but yet we will be coming forward in the near future with other adjustments throughout this fiscal year in order for us to be solvent by June 30th of next year.
Yes.
Okay. And then did we have a figure or some ballpark figure?
No, not at this juncture.
Okay.
Right now, our first plan is to close the gap caused by the state budget, because that is not part of our budget plan. We anticipated the cut. We have some recommendations. As a consequence of your motion, we worked with departments to identify some reasonable budget reductions right now, which will not impact current level of services. There's some other recommendations we'll be bringing forward in the report I referenced earlier in my presentation. As we go through the year, one thing we are recommending is a continuation of the hiring freeze. We're going to modify that freeze to give some degree of flexibility for critical positions, but otherwise that freeze will still be in place. That is something that our departments are having a very difficult time dealing with, but it's a prudent move and something we must continue with.
Just recall that excepting for the state budget cuts, our fiscal problem is not this year, it is next year. And I think that we're hopefully in the next few weeks or months will resolve where all the city family agrees on what the magnitude of the problem is, and then we will be making recommendations to address that problem, so next fiscal year we're not facing a major budgetary problem. So you will be seeing, I think, a two-phased. One is trying to bring everybody together on what the magnitude of the problem is, and then secondarily, but equally important, how to address that overall problem.
Okay. Mr. Fujioka, you mentioned that there's going to be a more enhanced reporting to the council. That will also give us some guidance as to compensate for that additional latitude you give general managers for the freezes, that we'll be able to see on a monthly basis who's staying within budget.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. We'll provide that level of detail. And what Ron was referring to is through our reporting process, we'll tell you not only where we're at today or at that moment in time, but we'll also be able to project expenditures and revenue on a go-forward basis. So we'll be able to project or at least anticipate better where we're at the end of the year as we go through the budget process.
Okay. And then my final question, I think at the committee there was discussion that there was about $1 billion worth of taxation that the Indian reservation had not nailed down. Is that something that's now currently concrete in the budget, or is that still based on discussions and negotiations? Because that would be an additional hit if another $1 billion did not come into the state budget.
I don't believe it's been nailed down. I believe it was a request made to the Indian nations and I've yet to hear a firm commitment.
Okay.
I haven't even heard an unfirm commitment.
Okay, thank you.
It's a wish and a dream.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parks. Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, and thank you for those questions, that discussion, Mr. Parks. I guess I just want to understand fundamentally two things. One, how we're doing this year, and two, what your thoughts are in terms of the out years. First of all, how are we doing this year in terms of, we were supposed to have some discussion at around this time. I guess you're working on the report, and I realize it's still in draft form. How are we doing in terms of receipts coming in and outlays going out? I mean, are we in sync? Are we not in sync? What are your thoughts so far about that?
At this point in time, we're within the budget plan. We are, the receipts are tracking the same. We ended the year less than 0.1% off our revenue target. Our expenditures are at the appropriate levels. We're not seeing any huge variations, either plus or negative, from what we put in the budget plan. The biggest challenge now is well, not the challenge, the next step is to deal with the deficit caused by the state budget and to take through Budget and Finance and then this full council a budget reduction package to address that $47 million hit.
In 0304.
For this year, for 3-4, yes.
Now, is there any chance that when we get the reports from you that you won't agree that it's 47, that it might be larger, or is it likely that, when you were talking about the unknowns, Mr. Deaton, I want to understand, are you talking about 0304 unknowns, or are you talking about something else?
Well, I think all I was saying is that the budget at the state level is still in flux. We could get hit more than 47. What you will see from both of us is that we think that you should address, as it relates to the state budget, $47 million. I think we'll be in concert on how to address that. I think we'll be also in concert that the next step is to decide how much money we don't have for next year and what do we do this year in order to prepare for that. That won't be in that report, the first report, but it'll be in a second report.
That's sort of your out-year analysis.
That's the out-year analysis, and the out-year, we still believe
that there's a structural deficit.
There's a structural deficit.
And what can you tell us more about that as you sit here than you did a few months ago? Or what should you just be highlighting now for newer members who might want to know how they should start to think about this in anticipation of your report?
I had mentioned earlier the importance of, at minimum, sticking to our budget plan. And I know that because I've heard from individual members that there are a number of needs throughout the various council districts that haven't been addressed recently or in the past few years that must be addressed right now. But if they're not part of the budget plan, we do not have the resources to address some of those needs right now. The biggest message I have right now is that we do not go to any of our reserve funds for any appropriations outside the budget plan. We will need those resources at minimum to help us address the go forward.
Anything?
I would just say that as you look at the budgets of departments, it's a high water mark, not where it's going to be at the end of the year.
What do you mean by that?
That we can fund it, if we could fund that this year and create ourselves a great big problem next year. But what we should do and what will be coming out of our respective offices, I believe, is that you start to lower expenditures this fiscal year in anticipation of a problem next year. So the high water market is where they are. This is the number of employees, et cetera, is higher than it's going to be at the end of this fiscal year, and it's going to be significant higher than it is next fiscal year. We will have less employees next year.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President.
We can always get rid of the CLA, according to Mr. Smith.
The record will reflect that. Thank you very much, Mr. Weiss. Ms. Miskowski.
Well, over the last 2 weeks we've been on break. I think all of us received letters from the mayor's office raising yet another specter of concern because of the discussions that have been out there about the VLF. I mean, basically the state budget was relatively balanced by the way of this exchange. But part of it was the raising or a lifting of the reduction that had been in place on the VLF, so that everyone was complaining, and is complaining throughout the state, of the triple payment on the VLF from compared to last year, the last few years. There has been much discussion, much of it centered as a consequence of the recall, but much discussion that there could be and might be this, over the next month or two, in Sacramento, an action which would cut back the VLF. Have the CLA or CAO gotten any information? And I guess I would also like to turn to my colleagues who've got a lot more Sacramento experience than I do, what the read is in Sacramento as to whether or not that bill has any serious likelihood of happening over the next few weeks or few months, and if so, what then? Or do we know then? Are they looking at any trade, or just, don't worry, everybody, will cut it? And where will that cut come from, particularly as it's now related to our swap? Any read on that or comments?
My gut is that most of the rhetoric right now is just that. I think until after the first week in October and there's some stability at the state, I don't think you're going to, I don't see any major shift in that. There can be these potential cash flow issues that Mr. Fujioka is talking about, but a substantive change of that nature I don't think will happen between now and the first week in October. If certain people happen to be governor at the end of that process, in some cases I would bet a lot of money that will be on the table, and in other cases it wouldn't be at all. So
the short-term answer is that there's not likely anything that happen in the next month, but after October 7th, depending on what the results are, we can be looking at, again, I'm sure we'll be looking at the whole state budget and its implication on the city budget anyway after October, as they hire whatever great budget gurus in the sky they're going to hire to fix the state's problems. All right, that was my concern, that we might have a hit immediately in the next 30 days or so as a consequence of...
we'll monitor anything. As the saying goes, as long as they're in session, anything is possible, but I don't think that will happen. I also believe that after the resolution on the governor's, a special session would not be surprising. So, there's
I share Ron's...
just wild times in California politics.
Kind of Ron's observations. I think if something were going to happen, it would have happened already. They would have just reacted immediately to get the benefit of that change for that 30-day period. But it's everyone throughout the state has said it's absolutely crazy. No one has ever seen it like this. The uncertainty is the only thing that's certain. So it's amazing what's happening.
But at least in the next 30 days, we're not likely to see any dramatic shifts, but after
I don't
that,
believe so.
It's brand new. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Miskowski. Mr. Cardenas.
Well, the legislature, absent them calling an emergency session on the budget or whatever else might be facing us, maybe a new face in the governor's office, after the middle of this month, we're going to know what Sacramento is going to be doing on the budget, any changes they might be doing legislatively, and also seeing how the trailer bills, if all of them are going to actually follow through. One thing that we all need to understand is everything that we're doing here is based on projections. Everything that we're doing here is based on intent, yet much of the language, much of the details of the budget coming out of Sacramento has yet to be ratified. So therefore, following through with what Ms. Miskowski was talking about is when are we going to get some updates or what have you. I think in the next 14 days we're going to know what's going to be in concrete and what's not. Absent, like I said, any kind of special session where that's what we're going to be faced with through the next few months until they reconvene in the legislature in January. That being said, how do we look as a city when it comes to how we've been affected, and what's our best guess as far as we don't want to project nor would we want to welcome any more cuts, but at the same time, how realistic are we being on our end when it comes to the numbers coming out of Sacramento? Is it going to get worse, do we anticipate?
Well, it's going to get worse. I mean, I think that they went through great pains to come to this conclusion. And as you said, they haven't even come to the conclusion. And there are some very unhappy unhappy legislators in key positions, and as I said before, we're still talking they're out of budget, out of whack by $8-10 billion for next fiscal year, and so relatively speaking, no matter the fact that it's almost $50 million, we did relatively well.
Our projections were as high as 120, and as we were
Exactly.
lobbying second.
So I think next, depending on what happens again in October on the governor's race, if there's a new governor, I would not, depending on who it is, I wouldn't doubt that there'd be a special session. If there isn't, I think that in January and through next fiscal year, we're going to go, through the rest of this fiscal year, we're going to go through what we just went through for the last 3 to 4 months, and it'll be trench warfare and very difficult, because they're going to be in difficult problems, and just the very fact that there was a recall will make it more difficult, regardless of whether it's successful or not, more difficult to come to a conclusion. There is nothing that has happened in the last 3 months that makes me think the next 6 months is going to be any better. It'll be much worse.
So basically, our
But other than that, I
projection-
think things are just rosy.
Our projection of a $47 million hit from Sacramento is definitely on the low side. It's not likely to
Yes.
get better, it's very likely to get worse.
Exactly.
The one
Once
thing
again,
that's...
we don't welcome that, but being realistic.
Understand. The one thing that's important to emphasize is that the 47 has been represented to local government, well, our city, and then the respective hits for the other little cities, as a one-time hit because of the timing delay and the some police grant money. That is I don't believe it's just going to be a one-time hit. Because of the problem they're carrying over next year, and the fact they've covered this year, they balanced this year in large part by just borrowing money, next year there will be a consequence. If we think this is the only one-time hit and nothing will happen next year, that would be very, very short-sighted on our part.
Well, one of the things that I think that we need to do here in the city of Los Angeles is certainly continue to be diligent about our communication with Sacramento, continue to be forthright with them about how this is affecting our ability to keep our streets safe and to do the kinds of things that they expect, Sacramento expects local government to handle. In addition to that, I think it's very important for us to understand, in my analysis on the state budget, there are many budget assumptions to the tune of maybe $1.5 to $2 billion that perhaps aren't as real as they seem to be on paper. For example, Sacramento, as well we do on the local level, we depend on Sacramento, and we make our projections what we think they're going to give us. We're finding out now that we're short $47 million based on what we were hoping everything would be earlier this year. Same thing, Sacramento made some assumptions based on what they think Washington is going to feed Sacramento. And therefore, based on that one particular assumption, they're going to have a greater deficit than the $8 billion they're projecting for the next coming year. And it's going to be closer to what Ron Deaton, you were talking about, $10 billion if we're lucky. Then Sacramento's going to be faced with that. And as we are very well aware, many times Sacramento's making decisions based on what's best for them on their level of government, and we get the short end of the deal here on our local end of government. So at the same time, my main statement that I'd like to make to you is, once again, let's be diligent about watching Sacramento, about lobbying Sacramento, about making sure we keep our eye on what's going on and they don't touch certain funds or they don't go into certain places. They're going to have egregious effects on us locally. In addition to that, I think it's very important for us to understand that we're going to see some changes in the next 6 months for sure based on this year's budget. And that being the case, we better be ready to make the $47 million trimmings that we have to do today and beyond. Thank you.
Other members wishing to be heard on this item? Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Council President. The cost of the recall is going to be about 65 million? Is that the estimation?
That's my understanding.
If not more. I heard something as high as 50 or 60.
Yeah, 50, 60 million statewide.
I see. So there's a reciprocation here between how much we won't have and how much it's going to cost us to do this. Can I say that? I guess I did. I think it's just important that we understand the cost of these issues and we start balancing off what we can and can't do for our constituents. What we do on those days that we make those decisions as a body, as a city, as a state, the cost of these kinds of recalls has a very real dramatic effect on our library hours, our police, our fire systems, and everything else that we're going to have to make hard decisions. Just this morning, we had a press conference at TMDL's. We were told that over 10 years, it's going to cost us $120 million just to keep our waterways clean, so that our beaches and the river and our systems are in place so that we can capture the trash and everything else that flows into the ocean. And that's very real money that we're going to have to make decisions on. And this is one of those issues in which there's a direct correlation of whether we're going to have this recall or not. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Other members wishing to be heard on item number 3? Seeing none, let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
Thank you for the report. I believe we're ready for, I guess we're not ready for item number 1. Let's proceed to the next item, please.
Item number 10 was being held on the desk. That was reconsidered and held on the desk.
I understand we have a request for continuance on item number 10. Was that a one-week continuance? Colleagues, without objection, one-week continuance on item number 10, that would be September 10th.
Mr. President, I don't know if council's going to be in recess that day. Do you want to continue it to the 12th?
The next date would be that Friday. Proceed to the next item, please.
Item number 20 was called special by Councilmember Weiss.
Mr. Weiss's questions have been answered. On item 20, other members wishing to be heard? Seeing none, let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
That is approved. Next item, please.
Item number 1 is still on the desk, and I believe Mr. Ludlow has a motion on that one.
Mr. Ludlow.
Thank you. Just request to receive and file this item.
Okay, colleagues, motion to receive and file item number 1. Any further discussion? Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
That item is received and filed. Next item, please.
This is the time for comments from the public on items not on council's agenda.
And we have no requests today from members of the public to address the council on matters within our jurisdiction but not appearing on today's agenda. Public comment is therefore closed for today. Next item, please.
Do you wish to clear the desk before going into closed session?
Let's do housekeeping.
Council has motions for posting and referral,
Motion shall be posted and referred.
and that clears the desk for closed session.
Okay, thank you very much. Colleagues, in conformance with California law, we are close to entering into closed session. Mr. Villaraigosa, did you wish to be recognized? We deferred item number 10 till next Friday. Good. And if there's nothing further at this time, in conformance with California law, the council will now adjourn into closed session. Guards, please. Welcome back into open session. Madam Clerk, item before us, please.
The item before council is item number 49, and that's recommendation for settlement in the case of Plazat versus City of Los Angeles, and that's in the amount of $200,000.
Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
That is approved. Forthwith, please. Next item.
And that clears the desk, Mr. President.
Thank you. Colleagues, are there any announcements today? Mr. Labange.
So a reminder that tomorrow it will be the 222nd birthday of the city of Los Angeles. 222 years ago today, people at Mission San Gabriel gathered for the great sunset that came over the great Southwest here, and they said, we're going to form a city. We're going west. And they left that Mission San Gabriel on their long trek from Sonora, Mexico, to form the Pueblo Los Angeles. I want to thank the King of Spain for the time that he granted us the 28.5 leagues of land that brought this town together. And tomorrow night, everyone is invited, all of you on Channel 35. As I said yesterday, just come downtown to the Pueblo. We want to thank all the council members for the great assortments of cakes and food that we're all going to have, and the volunteer entertainment. There's some great entertainment. There's like American Idol. Is that the big popular show? There's talent coming from all over the city to sing and be part of the city's celebration. It's a very, very special day, and I want to thank you. We do look good for 220 years old, except for you, Mr. Zahn. I love you, but I don't know if you look good for 222. But I do love you. Thank you.
Thank you. Other announcements? Ms. Gruhl.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to, for the people listening at home, this Saturday is Pothole Day again in the 2nd District. Pothole Day. So, and Janice, I know, is the princess of potholes. I'm the queen of potholes. But we are having 2 locations on Saturday. One is at 8:30 in our Sunland Tahunga office, and the other will be at 10 o'clock at the Robinsons May parking lot in North Hollywood. But I do want to mention, Ms. Hahn, as well, that this time we are utilizing the neighborhood councils, and that neighborhood councils are organizing people in their areas, and they are co-sponsoring it, and it's very important in looking to them and to our residents association. So I challenge all of mine, including Mr. Martin Ludlow, to who could have more potholes filled. But I just want to make sure the public at large is listening and can participate on Saturday. Thank you.
Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're also having a cleanup in Little Armenia this weekend on Saturday, 8:30 in the morning. Folks are interested, please call my office at 323-913-4693 in Little Armenia. We'll be meeting on Hollywood Boulevard and spending a few hours cleaning up that area of East Hollywood. And Mr. Labange, thank you for organizing the birthday party. You know, when all the pobladores, and Antonio, when the pobladores came there was already an Indian village, Yangna.
Yeah.
You know, Nga means place,
Right.
like Cahuenga and Tahunga. But I just learned recently that Yang means poison ivy. So they came to the place of poison ivy, and that's
Right.
what the town was named
And
after.
then they went down, they met the Olympics, and they got that song, Poison Ivy. All right, I tried. Some of you remember the song. You remember the song.
Yeah. Too much recess time.
Other announcements?
Too much recess.
Mr. Parks for an announcement.
One announcement. The 90th Street Block Club will meet Saturday, September 6th at 3 p.m. at the Prince Hall Memorial Auditorium at 9027 South Figueroa. This is their annual Block Club meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. Other announcements? Upcoming events? I'll announce one. I'm proud of in the Sylmar community, the Northeast San Fernando Valley, the 7th District. Mr. Smith is well familiar with the terrain. We're having a ribbon cutting and grand opening ceremony for the Sylmar Library, which has been rebuilt. Twice the square footage, up to date, everything, books, computers, wonderful programs for kids and families. This Saturday at 10 a.m., the whole city is invited to join us in those festivities. And we'll repeat that announcement on Friday. Mr. Zine.
I think Mr. Smith will be at a formal inspection on Saturday at 9 a.m. I'll be joining him for all the LAPD reserves will be doing a formal inspection in Westchester, and Smith and I will be there standing tall. We will not be at the library opening. Others, we would be there.
Desk duty for you, Mr. Zine.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Any final announcements? If not, please rise for adjourning motions. Adjourning motions. Ms. Hahn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask that we adjourn our council meeting today in the memory of Artie Jefferson. Artie, as she was known, was born on October 23rd, 1925, and died on August 27th of this year. She lived in the Watts community for more than 50 years. She was born in Saline, Louisiana, where she attended school and worked as a teacher for 1 year. She was married to Fred Jefferson in 1946, and they moved to LA together. Artie enjoyed being a mother and a housewife in her early years of marriage and later worked as a domestic worker and seamstress and a structural assembler at the McDonnell Douglas factory. She loved to cook for friends and family and opened her home often for parties, celebrations, and holidays. Artie is survived by her 5 daughters, Idris, Ernestine, Cecilia, Kimberly, and Teresa, and many other friends and family members. Services will be held this Friday, September 5th at 11 a.m. at the New Greater Circle Mission in Los Angeles.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. Mr. Labange.
Members, during the recess, the tragedy fell Bobby Bonds, who was a tremendous athlete, a tremendous member of the baseball community, father of Barry Bonds. But Bobby Bonds, who played for the San Francisco 49ers in the late days of when Willie Mays and Orlando Cepeda and Willie McCovey, and there was Bobby Bonds, and he was an absolute tremendous athlete. He grew up in Riverside, California. Came into the majors as one of the first to hit 30-30 home runs. And there's no tandem in professional sports that has a father-son combination like the Bonds family with Bobby and his great expertise and his son Barry. I know as a fan of baseball, one of the most exciting plays I ever saw was Bobby Bonds stealing home at Dodger Stadium one day in the early 70s. And when he was on base, he was on fire. And he took off for home and beat the throw and stole home. And he was just a very heroic player. He served many roles for the San Francisco Giants in the years. And right before he passed, he did get to see his son play in San Francisco. And from the region, as I like to say, I know I claim a lot in Los Angeles, but here from Riverside, California, I ask that we all join in memory of Bobby Bonds as a great Californian, a great baseball player, and truly someone very special.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Mr. Ludlow.
Members ask that we adjourn in memory of Devron Lavelle Lewis, a young man who began working with the MTA in 1998, was known as a hard worker with a great attitude and a very bright future with the MTA. He was fatally shot in the 5100 block of West Jefferson as he was driving home from his MTA shift at the West Hollywood division. He was 28 years old, loved music, was working on a CD when he was killed, never belonged to any gangs or got in any trouble. And his parents wanted the public to know that he was a proud organ donor and that his organs have been donated to 5 people. I ask that we adjourn in his memory.
Ms. Misikowski.
In a too tragic echo, I think, of what Mr. Ludlow just did, I'd like to have the council adjourn in the memory of Angel Lopez, who was an aspiring baseball player who was killed in a shooting. He had had a party the weekend of August 24th for himself and other friends of his who were passionate about baseball when a group of gang members confronted the partygoers. And Angel went out and said, "We're not gang members, we're baseball players." But the gang leader took out a gun and coldly shot him in the heart directly. In that shooting, 5 others were struck by bullets and hospitalized. Angel died in his father's arms in the driveway of his home, August 24th, where they had practiced ball for years, where the father had nurtured the young man's dream of a career in the big league. He was 22 years old, had been a star pitcher at Venice High School, was currently at Los Angeles City College and being groomed by his coaches to go on to Division I, Division II, NCAA at UCLA or Chico or Loyola. His parents also donated every organ and body part that they could. They were consoled by the loved ones and the prayer around him. The family isn't bitter, but they said, "We've got to get these guys off the street." Services were held at St. Joseph Catholic Church in Hawthorne. But again, it's a tragic reminder of coming back to the city and some important things we have to do. So I ask the council to adjourn in his memory.
Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 2 adjourning motions. First one is Mr. Ed Townsend, who died of heart failure, age of 74, on Wednesday, August the 10th. He was a singer, songwriter, producer, best known for his 1958 pop single, For Your Love, and for writing and co-producing the late Marvin Gaye's #1 hit, Let's Get It On. He was born in 1929. He wrote over 200 songs, including the 1974 hit for the Impressions, Finally Got Myself Together. His funeral services were held at the Salvation Army Riverside Corps Chapel on Wednesday, August 17th. He leaves his wife Janice and a variety of, and a host of relatives. Also, an 8th District constituent, Jessie Cobbs, was born in Ruston, Louisiana, passed away on August 17th. She and her twin brother Leslie were the youngest of 5. Their mother and father moved away passed away when they were only 3 years old. During the war, she worked as an ammunition inspector in St. Louis Defense Plant and quickly advanced as a supervisor. In 1951, she decided she wanted to become a nurse, and after graduating from nursing school, she began serving as a nurse in Missouri Baptist Church for 19 years. After retiring, she relocated in Los Angeles, where she became a member of the Mount Moriah Baptist Church, where she participated in the Sunday school and noonday prayer band, as well as being a member of the Crenshaw Senior Citizen Group. Her funeral services were held at Mount Moriah Baptist Church on Saturday, August 23rd. She leaves 2 daughters and 5 grandsons, 1 granddaughter.
Other tributes, Mr. Zine.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, we ask we adjourn in memory of a Los Angeles police officer, retired Frank M. Kottner. Frank passed away August 8th. Retired Los Angeles police officer, born and raised in Hollywood, California, graduated from Hollywood High School and served his country in the United States Marine Corps during World War II. Proudly served the department for 27 years as a motorcycle officer. May Frank M. Kottner rest in peace.
Other tributes. Madam Clerk, please call the roll. Thank you all very much. This meeting is adjourned.
You are watching LA City View, Channel 35. Your city, your channel.